A Markie Scenic Showman'S engine. This is part 6 of the first steam test. But before that I need to modify the gas system. The original gas pipe for the gas system was too short, so I rang the owner of the engine and asked him to phone Forest Classics to get a longer one. And the very next morning, quite early, there was a knock on the door and the postman brought me this one, which was more than long enough, so I put a loop in it underneath the bunker. Time to get ready now for the first steam test. In order to test run the engine using compressed air, which I have been doing, I partially dismantled the valve that's on the way to the cylinder so I could put an airline on the end of it. And here's a shot of the valve complete once again. I'm slightly puzzled by the logic of fitting this valve where it's fitted, from the steam line to the main cylinder block. The owner said that as the regulator was very ineffective, this was a fine control to regulate the speed of the engine. More about that shortly. While I was speaking to the owner about the gas pipe, I said, "How do you get the water into the engine?" Because I'd failed to notice this very discreet pump in the belly tank, with possibly the shortest arm I've ever seen on a water pump. I'm going to make a handle for it. A very simple turning and drilling operation, and if anyone watching this has lost their Markie pump handle, a 7mm hole in the end of a piece of bar will work perfectly. And here is my pump handle, very quickly made using a piece of phosphor bronze. It's a perfect fit on the pump and works well. I'm filling the tank using a bottle that once contained spring water, now it contains tap water. There now follows a virtual pumping frenzy. The small pump's very good and you can move it very fast and it still pumps water into the boiler. However, it does take quite a long time until the boiler's full. Once I'd filled the boiler until the water was 3/4 of the way up the gauge glass, I turned my attention to filling the gas tank. Here's a useful tip when you fill this type of gas tank. When you fill the tank for the first time, it is at the same temperature as the room, and it's also at the same temperature to start with as the commercial gas canister. And why am I telling you this? Well, because the gas doesn't flow very well when the canister and tank are at the same temperature. Now it's time to light the burner, and after a while, the gas in the tank at the back of the traction engine will chill as it evaporates. So it's a good idea, after initially raising steam, to refill the gas tank, because the heat of your hands will warm the gas canister, and of course the gas tank itself will be well chilled by that time. So when you refill it from the commercial gas canister, you get a much faster flow down the pipe. I would do it in this sequence. I'd start to raise steam, and while the steam raising is underway, I would oil every moving part of the engine, after which I would turn off the gas to the burner using the tap on the tank, and refill the gas tank as I've just mentioned. The heat of my hand is definitely warming the commercial canister. Time now to relight the burner, and in no time at all some pressure is showing on the gauge. It's just coming up to 40 pounds per square inch, and the crackling that you can hear is all the oil inside the firebox around the burner being cremated by the burner. Very shortly afterwards I noticed that the pressure gauge is now showing 60 pounds per square inch. And in this clip I would like to bring something to your attention. Look to the right of the pressure gauge. On top of the water gauge there is a safety valve. Have I slipped into an alternative parallel dimension? What is a safety valve doing on top of the water gauge? I will think on this further and come back to it. This safety valve didn't even blow off when the pressure was at 80 pounds per square inch. And because it's not one of the type of safety valves where you can get hold of the end with a pair of pliers to test it, well, it just doesn't work. So what's going on here? Let's have a look at the plumbing. This valve allows you to turn off the output of the crankshaft driven pump, and it's not a good idea to use this when the engine is running. And similarly, this valve, which is connected to the output of the hand pump, turns the water off from that. And if you close this valve, you cannot pump any water into the boiler using the hand pump. As an educated guess, I would assume that both of these valves are supposed to be open when you run the engine, and then once you turn off the gas burner and the boiler starts to cool, you close them, stopping the vacuum that is created as the steam disappears inside the boiler from sucking all the water from the belly tank into the boiler and overfilling it. The pressure gauge seems to have a problem. It never really went this high, but suddenly it went hard over past 80 psi. and no amount of tapping the gauge would make it do anything else. So I looked in my box of pressure gauges and found one to fit to the engine, but unfortunately the thread was different. I've never seen this before. I've always used standard threads on these. So I took it apart and realigned the board on tube, and it seemed to start working again, but I did recommend to the owner that he buys a new one from Markie. In my opinion, this is where the design of this traction engine gets a little bit strange. The lower copper pipe is the main steam feed from the boiler. It goes through a valve and into the steam chest. Then via the regulator the steam can be admitted to the cylinder. The problem is that on top of the steam chest is the safety valve. This is a Salter type safety valve, same as the ones that are commonly fitted to full-size traction engines, but the problem is if I turn this tap off, then there's no safety valve on the boiler, because turning this tap off stops the steam from going into the steam chest where the safety valves are. This seems to me to be a very strange design. Are the Salter safety valves dummies? Well, when I adjust them they seem to work, and I assume that's why there is a safety valve right on top of the water gauge. The problem is though, this safety valve is not like a normal safety valve. The ones that I normally use have a moving centre part that you can get to with a pair of pliers to test that it's working, and this one isn't, it's stuck. So as an experiment, I replumbed the system, completely eliminating the valve from the circuit, and the Salter safety valves blew off perfectly at 50 psi. The good news is, as soon as I opened the regulator, the engine sprang into life, and here it is running on about 50 psi. Once I started to play with the regulator, I realised what the problem was. Regulators on miniature traction engines usually move a slide valve over a port inside the steam chest. Even on my 4.5-inch scale Showman'S engine, it was quite tricky to get the regulator perfectly positioned until I extended it with a lever to the rear of the engine to make it easier to drive. The solution to the problem on this engine was to fit a valve in line with the main steam feed to the cylinder, so you can use the regulator as an on-off switch and regulate the speed of the engine using this valve. For the moment I'm going to run it like this. Then suddenly I had a brainwave. The little pump handle that I made for the water pump fits on the end of the regulator, and the short extension lever now makes it possible to move the regulator in more accurate increments. What I will do before I give this back to the owner is I will return the plumbing to the way it was. Last night I phoned him and spoke to him about the problem, particularly the one of the sticking safety valve on top of the water gauge, and this really was stuck fast. Even at £80 per square inch it didn't lift. I thought it would be a good idea to put the engine in gear and watch the wheel go round, and here it is going round. So as I've just said, I'm going to return the plumbing to standard, and I'm also going to have a look at the mechanical lubricator, which appears to be overflowing all the time. The owner of the engine is coming to pick it up on Thursday and we're going to steam it. I intend to do some more work on the engine later today. But that's it for this one. My gas tank is empty. Stay safe, stay well, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that you can find other videos that you may like to watch, and by using the playlists you can actually watch the videos back to back, making it unnecessary to comment that the videos are too short.